This episode of Truth's Table is brought to you by Truth's Table Presents the Faith and Child Anti-Poverty Forum. Please consider joining us on April the 4th in Columbia, Maryland at the Harriet Tubman Cultural Center. We're going to be tackling the important topic of ending child poverty in the United States. To get your free ticket, go to Eventbrite and look up Truth's Table, Faith and Child Anti-Poverty Forum. We can't wait to see you there.
Sisters, how y'all feel? Brothers, y'all all right? If this is your first time at Truth's Table, welcome to the table. And if you've been sitting at the table with us all these years, we are so grateful that you have been listening to us through these years, and we are inviting you to partner with us and support our work at patreon.com/truthstable. Now pull up a chair and have a seat at the table with us. Hey y'all, welcome to Truth's Table, Midwest Culture for Grace and Truth. I'm Ekemini.
And I'm Christina.
This table is built by Black women and for Black women. So welcome to the table. See, how you doing there?
You know, I'm doing okay today. How are you doing today?
A little tired, but we're going to keep moving.
This is a theme that people will know that we are at the recording retreat because fatigue is a theme of the recording retreat now. Although we have just eaten lunch, and so that's a blessing. I do believe that should help with clarity of thought because we have a serious topic on the table that deserves clarity of thought.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So yeah, we are talking about child poverty and just our own understanding of poverty, how we came to form ideas about that, either through the church, through culture, through people we know, our own experience. So that is what is on the table, so
let's talk about money.
What's going on? Yeah. So see, how would you like to launch it? I'm thinking like how what was growing up, your own relationship to money, or even now, I guess.
Yeah.
How were you shaped and formed? How did you come to an understanding of how you conceptualize, think about money, and use money today?
Yeah, I mean, I may have some unusual opinions about money in the sense that I don't like what the fear of not having money and the lust of money does to people. Like I have a particular sensitivity, like an acute sensitivity to the way I see people flip out over money. And with that being said, not because like we don't need it, like we got to eat, like we need to have lights on. It's important. Yeah. But I think there seems to be like a couple of things that make people, just cut up. and that is at the top of the list.
Oh, for sure.
It is money. I mean, there's a proverb that talks about asking the Lord to not give us so much Proverbs, that we forget the Lord. And then the second 30, part of that text is the second part of that text is to not have so little that we're tempted to dishonor God to get it right. And so that speaks to just people's temptations, I think, around money and when we and who we think is caring for us and keeping us and what we have to meet our needs, right? So I think one of my earliest traumatic memories is about money. If I go back in my mind and think about what is my most earliest traumatic memory, it is definitely about human depravity and lust for money, even over the most smallest amount, what people feel like they have a right to have. And so it has shaped me in some ways that probably make me a certain type of businesswoman because I cringe a little bit when it's all about the dollars because I've literally seen someone's life threatened over $5. That's one of my earliest memories. And so I just know visually when people freak out and feel like I don't have what I'm supposed to have, then where it can drive someone, right? And also how wicked it is to create the systems and ecosystems that foster that type of desperation, but also the ways in which we can start to live in a way that's so prideful that we think that our worth and value is defined by a dollar amount. So so that's a bit about me in that whole hodgepodge. But how about you? Kind of your relationship to money in terms of your earliest memories or your understanding of money and poverty.
Yeah. So, growing up, I didn't come with a family from a family of means, we didn't have money like that. You know, my mom functionally was a single mom, and we grew up in low income housing, aka the projects. You know, I mean, they were nice for where we were, but that's the reality of where I lived and where I grew up. And I remember one of my earliest memories is I remember the stigma, the shame, and the indignity and inhumanity attached to that. To living where we lived, you know.
So much shame around poverty.
Yeah, so much. And I remember it was elementary school. You know, it had to be, elementary school. Can't remember. Elementary, middle, let's say 4th, 5th grade, somewhere there. You know, and I remember this one guy at our school saying like, oh, all the people that live there, over there. You know, are poor. This was a little Filipino boy, by the way. You know, all the people that live over there, I think my mom says, or whatever, are welfare or food stamps or, you know, all types of whatever, you know, whatever that was supposed to mean.
They need governmental assistance.
Exactly. Governmental assistance. All
right.
You know, and so all this shame.
But it's a caricature.
It's a caricature because it wasn't true that everybody there, you know,
and even if they did, that wouldn't.
And so what? Even if
people,
you know, that has no bearing on, you know, who they are as, you know, image bearers, you know, or who we are as image bearers. And so I remember that, and you know, you just begin to figure out, you know, where you are on the class totem pole and the race class totem pole, you know, as well, when you are among your peers, you know, in school and growing up, and then you see things going like, oh yeah, all of us do live particularly here. You know, all the Black people seem to somehow be situated here.
Sure.
And then our white counterparts don't live here. And they don't come around here. You know,
and when you're young, you don't know about redlining or those that kind of the social and historical dynamics.
The structural, exactly. You don't know about the structural, you know, systems that keep you where you live and keep the others out, you know, or you know, so which is all by design. So that was probably my earliest memory in that. Okay. I mean, I knew we didn't have money, but we had everything that we needed, though. We definitely had everything we needed. Never missed a meal. It was never, you know, we weren't hanging in the child line. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's just
because there are levels.
There's levels to it. So, you know, I don't want to, you know, because I think that you could overstate it, you know, but you could also understate it, you know. So I think that's a fair, you know, assessment. But my mom did always emphasize the importance of being good stewards over whatever you got. The little bit you got, and you know, she would write her checks, got her checkbook, and you know, just so she was pretty wise, you know, with money. She never had a lot of it, and I think that's why she really had to manage it, because she was the one that had to take care of the family. She was the breadwinner for all of us, and so, and she worked a lot. She worked a whole lot, and I think that's also part of what it means to have an understanding, you know, of having little means or being on borderline poverty or just, you know, low income, is that your parents or your parent, you know, is working all the time.
For sure.
And so, and one of the consequences of that is you having to, you know, you're at that point, latchkey kids were a thing. Yeah. And I was absolutely in the number.
For sure.
You know, and so, because you had to take care of yourself because you didn't have the financial capacity and the means to have, you know, my mom didn't have the financial means or capacity to just hire some babysitter. And also, you don't want to have your kids with just anybody. You know, so I think about that, but she did try to instill some good, you know, principles with me and my siblings about, you know, at least taking care of our money. And I'd say we all kind of are pretty good about trying to at least take care. So yeah, we had a, you know, pretty basic, you know, level, you know, understanding of like stewarding your money well. I think when you don't have a lot of it, you try to, you know, also I know it can go either way, you know, for people, you know, if you don't have much of it, then you just go ahead and spend it. I know that some people live on that street. When you don't have a lot of it, you try to, you know, be as wise with it as you can. And so I think that's something that me and my siblings, you know, got. The latter is what we got, you know, from our mom, which I'm grateful for. But I also just think that, you know, because I just didn't have a lot of it, I think I can even see how it impacts me even now, you know, to some degree. I think there's still some of that. If I'm honest, like some poverty mentality. Somewhere it's like, well, let me try to make this thing work. All right, I'll try to hold on to stuff until it's until it falls off, because I'm like, well, I don't need to buy. Do I really need to buy a new one of whatever this is? And I think there is some of that, in play. I think that's probably ingrained from childhood, if I'm just honest about that. But I also think it is also part of what it means to also be entrepreneurial, right? Because you don't have a check every 2 weeks, right? So you're always trying to manage what you got when you get it, and just trying to be wise about, at least for me, I'm trying to be wise about, okay, how do I manage this? Make it stretch and make it work. But then I also, have, a family member who, like you witness, to their own detriment, this lust for money, a love, which obviously the scripture talks about in First Timothy 6:10 talks about, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and so I had an uncle, one of my favorite uncles, who was living a trifle life, let's say it that way, and unfortunately was murdered, because this is a love of money that causes and drives us, toward it's also systemic factors too. So I'm not trying to, negate that too, but there's ways in which we can be tempted. We don't have enough of it. Just like Proverbs 30 says, when we don't have enough of it, we can get very creative about the ways that we can get ill-gotten money. And unfortunately he was murdered, because of the life that he was living. And the choices that were made, and the ways that he made. Let me say the ways that he made his money. This was our money man, uncle. When he came to the family parties, we all lined up because he was a rubber band man. He had money, and he would dole out money to all of us. And there's a lot of kids at the African parties. Okay, and so he had money, and so I just remember kind of just seeing, different levels, and just of how people enter in, into this whole money world and poverty and
well, and some people's ill-gotten means are criminal in the social context, and some people's ill-gotten means because they have power,
corporate,
and they are able to. Whoever has the power dictates the morality of the laws of the land, and so pharmaceutical companies putting out opioids. That devastate lives that we know people are addicted to. There's still there's the same moral ramifications as somebody who is a street pharmacist, right?
Right.
But one of those has the protection of affluence, and the other one doesn't. So, and
the law.
I mean, I think in my mind I make a distinction between, although they certainly overlap, between the way I think about my work ethic and the way I think about money. Those are two different. Those are almost two different things for me. Like I will always work. I will be surprised if I don't work. And you know how I am. I'm like, I don't pass up, I have to give a lot of thought and discernment to passing up a job or being like, I don't think this is a fit. I'm like, it's a job. Like the way I think about work is you get it done. Right. You get it done for your family. And that's a value that, that is instilled in me. Like, there are some things that I'm like, I feel like I'm not in an elitist way, but in the sense of like, I'm more qualified than this. This doesn't fit my life vision, but I'm going to do it until I get to the thing I want to do. So that's not necessarily stemming solely from a desperation just to be paid, but to be a good steward of what I know my money has to care for. Yeah, so that's the way I've
been entrusted with.
Yeah, that's the way I think of. That's the way I think about work. That's the way I think about how we use money. Is that it is meant to be spent. And I don't mean that in a reckless way, but like, when you think about the parable of the man who is hoarding all of these things, and it's like tonight your life
will be demanded of you.
Yes, will be required of you, and none of this stuff is going with you. And so I often think about the things that define me have to be the things that are eternal. They will be ultimately eternal. But yeah, I think for me there's a contrast between that. And I think I was listening to your point about, kids in school recognizing very early a social kind of economic hierarchy.
Yep.
And I would say I've experienced that all my life, even to now, because when I tell people where I was born and raised, I get the wildest responses from people that, if I tell people that I was raised in Baltimore, even people who would say that they are conscious and that they do political work.
Taking it back with that.
And they're justice minded and they know all about the stereotypes. I would say more often than not, to the tune of 90%. And I don't care how enlightened they think they are, I get the most outrageous responses from people.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who think they know the city.
Right.
Who think they know it because they watch The Wire or whatever. But that has, because that's always been a part of my life since leaving Baltimore to go to college. It has been something that has always stood out to me.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep.
And it is a part of what I think of it. Honestly, I have real strong words about it, kind of a wickedness in the way that we caricature people, we demean people, and dehumanize people. And I have seen people do that as it relates to Baltimore, as it relates to Chicago, as it relates to Compton, there are certain, and it's particularly piercing when it's people that are of my same ethnic background who do that. And it's disturbing, but you can see the ways in which all of that has been internalized, right?
Yeah.
And so as a person who doesn't have shame from where I was born and raised at all, like I don't have any shame about where I was born and raised, that is another reminder of just how people are defined by what they think something is and how they need this kind of external validation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, for me, people are always surprised when I say I'm from California. And from the Bay Area particularly, but obviously if I say the Bay Area, they assume Oakland. I'm not from Oakland. I'm from Silicon Valley, so like San Jose area, live right down the street from Apple. But I'm like, but we didn't have money, so we had money.
Right, Apple didn't give us any of their money.
We didn't have money. Be clear on that. You know what I mean? But I was like, y'all know just about every city does have low income housing. You know that.
Right. Because it has low income people.
Yeah. And so people are always surprised because they always think I'm from, East Coast, which I get. I mean, I've been I've been on the East Coast for a long time, and I did grow up in the golden age of hip hop, and so very deeply shaped by East Coast hip hop. So I think that's also part of it. But yeah, I think there is a sense in which people go, oh, they might assume you have money, or whatnot. Or people see me, I can put things together because I have to learn how to do that. It's from a young age on how to put myself together. In ways where I present well. Yeah.
And also I think projection of African immigrants too. I think that's on the table as well. Stereotypes of African immigrants and also real data of particular population of African immigrants and affluence and education and all the diaspora as well.
We're the outliers. My family's the outliers for sure. I'm like,
for sure.
I don't know. That was, but maybe it's because my parents came super, super early too. I don't know. We also had some significant life circumstances that completely changed the trajectory, of our lives. But yeah, I think that people probably think, I think people always think that, I came from money or I have because of those stereotypes or because of the way I present and put myself together. But I've always put myself together since I was young, probably trying to outlive, the stereotypes, that were placed on us because of where we live and where we came from. But also, I'm a bargain hunter because I grew up how I grew up. I do not play full price for anything. Yeah. We were trying to help my mom.
Shopping is a sport for some people.
It was a big thing, just trying to really help my mom save money all the time. That was always at the forefront of my mind, as an oldest child and who was doing a lot of co-parenting, But anyway, when I think about, well, actually, you know what? Why don't we take a quick break? Because I do want us to talk even more deeply about children in poverty, child poverty, why why we have these stigmas and why do we not even, why are children that don't even enter onto our radar screen, when it comes, they're not always top of mind, for us when we're talking about poverty, or talking about anything really, but talking about poverty as well. So let's take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, we will be talking about all of the things. So don't go nowhere. Keep it locked.
To our listeners in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, you don't want to miss this opportunity. Join Truth's Table Presents, the Faith and Child Anti-Poverty Forum, this April 4th, 2024. We'll be at the Harriet Tubman Cultural Center in Columbia, Maryland, talking about this important issue of faith and child anti-poverty work. Won't you join us along with our exceptional speakers that will be presenting that day? To learn more about it, go to eventbrite.com, and there you'll find information about Truth's Table Presents Faith and Child Anti-Poverty Forum. We look forward to seeing you on April 4th.
And we are back at the table talking about childhood poverty. First of all, this is an introduction episode, y'all, because this is a series. We cannot do justice to this topic in one episode. As you see, I'm going back into the recesses of my trunk. I was like, oh yeah, that happened.
Why? Because
also that happened. That's probably why I do that now. You're right.
For sure. Welcome. Welcome. I hope you're doing your own work as you're listening.
Welcome. So anyway, gosh. Okay. We are talking, what's on the table now that we're back from the commercial break?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think all of us have to reckon with the stereotypes that we have about people who are in poverty.
Yes.
And ideas of deservedness and work ethic and
rugged individualism.
All of that, immigrant mentality, all of these things are on the table, I think. And also just some self-awareness about our own implicit bias and how we see other people. So, I think that there is a sense in which I know intellectually and at best empathetically that poverty is a condition that can be given, and certainly as it relates to children. But I do think there's enough rhetoric, and if I peel back even my own layers, there may be times when I am judgmental or accusatory of the circumstances that people have or have found themselves in. Right? We always somebody else's life coach instead of coaching ourselves to what we ought to be. And so, have you ever kind of wrestled with maybe your own stereotypes or thoughts or impulses to understanding why someone is poor?
And I'm not trying to be self-righteous or some, super saint here, but I think because I did not grow up with money, because I'm not a baller now. Yeah. I had a brief moment in the sun in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't have this, these significant stereotypes of people that were poor because I was in a number, and so I think in some ways I'm like, I understand the ways in which I know my mom was a hard worker. Yeah. It wasn't for a lack of trying, right. It wasn't for a lack of work ethic. It was just, these were the cards we were dealt, and so I guess in some ways I have a lot of empathy, for people that are poor, that find themselves, at the bottom of the class totem pole, because I know how any of us can easily
or
end
at the
up
bottom of the class system,
I know how you can easily end up there. And I know that poverty in this country is engineered. As rich as this country is, honestly, nobody should be poor in this country, and so I guess in some ways I really have always seen like, there's forces outside, of us and out of my family system that keep us where we are, in the class system. And so I didn't have this paternalistic view of people that were poor, like you're lazy or you're just not doing enough.
Well, I mean, I personally just know too many wealthy people who are lazy. I just know that's not
Exactly.
You know, I mean, that money in and of itself is not about. I mean, you can just simply be born into money, and that's actually most predictive of where you're going to be financially. So there's not a whole lot of Oprahs out here. Mm-hmm.
And that's the way the system is designed, right? A system of capitalism. And so I don't know. And I also think about the fact that when it comes to poverty or just money, period, there's a sense in which we can really get mad at the poor as if they should not enjoy good things in life. So there would be critiques about people that were on SNAP, and wanting to get maybe a lobster or maybe a steak here and there. Should poor people not enjoy good food?
But I think there's a particular burden because of the shame. Like when you were saying how your mother and you now, as her child who was shaped by her, are just really conscientious about the way that you steward money, right?
Yeah.
And I think we can look at people with, I think people can have a hypervigilance, right? That they have to that they have to present themselves in this kind of overly noble financial way. But I think that's also an internalization of the shame of poverty too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I expect people are making decisions based on the circumstances that they are in. And if you're not in the circumstance, then it's hard to make a call, right, about what
they ought to be doing. Yeah, or what you would do
in that circumstance. Yeah. There are people, a part of that is, is rooted in kind of politically in the most recent period of history in the United States, this mythology of the welfare queen and this belief system that there are this disproportionate amount of folks that are
living high on the hog.
Yes, that are lying, that are using food stamps and governmental funds in deceptive ways. And all this kind of stuff is the narrative, right? It's the narrative that also parallels the same kind of story, the same kind of political identity that manufactured the narrative of people lying and falsifying votes and dead people voting. These are the same kind of paranoid tropes.
Same camp,
right? And they work. They're effective. They are very effective tropes about your neighbor, so that you can feel justified in ignoring whatever struggle, whatever pain, whatever hurt that they have, and the way in which you might experience privileges directly as a consequence of the lack that they might have in their lives.
Yeah, and then not to mention the people with power, who were taking advantage of the the loans that were given during the pandemic.
Oh, sure. Yeah, government bailout is welfare.
I forgot what
that's welfare.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. And we paid the price. And our generation in particular, the millennials have absolutely paid the price for that.
For sure. For sure.
And so, and just the ways in which they're not, impugned in those same ways. They're not maligned. They're not the subject of scorn, even though these people, have taken millions upon millions, during the pandemic at a very vulnerable time.
Yeah. And we know that poor people simply, and this is not like we know because it's intuitive. We know this from data that poor communities pay more for whatever they have. They pay more for food. They pay more for cars. They pay more for loans. They pay more in the long run. And so there is a privilege in wealth in the sense that wealth attracts more wealth.
More wealth, yes.
And again, that is the power of people being born into a particular economic safety net. We also know that some of the people who have taken the most biggest and lucrative risk and as entrepreneurs, they have built-in safety nets. So it's one thing for somebody to be like, oh, look at what I did. I'm so scrappy. And then you learn that, they had a father who put up $15 million or they had
an inheritance.
These are substantial safety nets, right? So it is easy to so-called take a risk, right? In knowing that if you fall back, you're still going to be falling back on more resources than the average person has in the country. So there is a mythology of the hardworking American that I think fosters pride in people and egotism, and at its worst case, lovelessness towards our neighbor. Now, I think one, I think because I'm not a descendant of the people who were told that narrative and then they came to America. Like those are, that,
right.
you know, so I'm a descendant of the people who built the country, who were force bred to become the free labor force of the country.
On.
Right. And so for me, it's easy to see that that's mythology.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are many people who don't see that as mythology. They've been handed that story and they use it as a point of temporary inspiration to the extent that it seems like it's working out for them until, of course, it does. And then they need somebody to blame, right? And typically people don't blame themselves. They don't blame the capitalistic puppet masters. They blame their poor neighbor.
Themselves. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I think that the danger and the temptation, I think, is for our cousins, you know, to want to play the game the same way, right? And so to have the same rules of engagement within capitalism, you know, and begin to imbibe that, well, you know, I got this, you know, if I just work harder, if I just do this or if they do make it, whatever make it is to them.
Yeah.
It's
the survival of the fittest notions, which are clearly from the pit of hell. I mean,
absolutely.
Like that is such an unchristian way of thinking about anything.
You know, because capitalism destroys collectivism, you know, and so you thinking that you got it on your own, you know, and you got it out of the mud by yourself. It was me and mine. That mentality.
It's all mythology.
Like, you know, and the standard, you know, for success, the standard for financial liberty, let me call it that way, you know, is not white men, and it's not capitalism. These are not the systems by which we want to be comparing ourselves. Right. Okay, like, you know, these are the very systems that bound our people. You know, continue to bind. Our salvation is not found in capitalism. It's not found in our capital. It's not found in our bank account. It's not, because it's here today, gone tomorrow. You know, and the scriptures talk about that all the time. You know, how the money just comes in and it can just fly away. It can fly away. Literally, I think that's the language that
literally fly away. It can fly away.
Totally. You know, and we just keep on living. Keep on living, as the old saints say. You have not experienced that. But seriously, I think, and we have got to find a way, you know, for some of our cousins who I love, but I'm like, y'all, Black capitalism is not the answer. It's just not. I understand why, you know, people feel that, you know. I think there's an issue of agency there, you know, and feeling like, if I could just, you know, then I will. In an oppressive system like that, where money is king.
Yeah,
you know,
and what also is like, if you can't turn over the system,
can't beat them, join them.
Yeah. And I think throughout history there have been, you know, intellectuals who debate that back and forth. And there are some people who engage that system knowing full and well, knowing well that it is mythology, knowing that it's problematic, but they're just trying to kind of hook it and work it as best they can, right? And then there are others who actually, you know, they buy it, they believe it, like they're true believers. And I think it's important. Right. I think it's important for us to reckon with where we may live within that, right? Where all people within this system that we're in, how we show up in that, right? Because even if we don't like the capitalistic system, and we can critique it, you know, all day. And I was trained in an academic program where we spent many of classes having a good time tearing it down. And then graduated people who immediately went and got MBAs and created, you know, what they needed to create, right? I think that we just need to know with eyes wide open what role we're playing in that system.
Absolutely.
That has been handed to us, that we have been born into, right?
Exactly.
So I do think it's wise when people understand money. I think you could be a person who is sociologically critiquing and theologically critiquing greed and capitalism and economic injustice and all those things. And I think a part of your critique has to be rooted in understanding how this thing works.
And where you fall into it.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
How much do you consume? How much are you taking? What do you know? And I think you have to think about that. I think that's something we've put on the table a little bit too. But what does it mean? I just don't know that. I don't know. We have to be, I think we all, and it's something I think for all of us to think about, is the ways that capitalism has shaped us and misshaped us, you know, in the church, outside the church, obviously, but inside the church.
Oh, for sure.
As believers, when how have we begun to really be misshaped by this thing?
Yeah.
And this mammon.
Yeah.
The love of mammon. Like, in what ways? I think we have to do a lot of self-interrogation. About that. And I think that's something worth talking about and worth wrestling with and thinking about.
Yeah.
As we continue into the series, but we even talked about the in one of the earlier episodes about fast fashion.
Yeah.
And what's behind that.
For sure.
And getting those threads.
Accumulation.
At a ridiculously low price.
Well, and even when we think about the caricatures that are shaped about people who are the working poor, who are experiencing poverty, those characters usually vilify their work ethic, their temperament, their ethics, their morals,
their family system,
and we know that is wrong. But even if you were a person who is intoxicated with that mythology, you're going to accept it and embrace it. What then do you say to the children of the working poor? What do you say to the 1-year-old who is living in a neighborhood where there is still all kinds of toxin in the paints in the wall that impact their frontal lobe development? What do you say to the 3-year-old who it is not their fault that there is sleep impoverishment, which is associated with poverty, that impacts their ability to rest and be in a home where there's absolutely. I mean, what do you say to the 7-year-old who didn't choose the school that they go to? So even if you want to cling to what I think are these ungodly caricatures of our neighbors, what are you saying about the children's work ethic?
Yeah.
What must we do, and how must we respond to children who are facing poverty,
who are suffering in some very significant ways?
Absolutely.
The children that are having to fight off rats and collecting roaches because there's so many of them in the apartment.
And it's direct connection to things like asthma. So there's so many indignities, But again,
and so much contempt.
The caricatures do not hold up. It's wrong to say that about the 18-year-old, the 28-year-old, the 38-year-old. But you can see just how misguided it is.
Yes.
To then accuse the baby, the toddler, the elementary school kid, the high school kid of being the reason for the poverty that they were born into. Yeah. And as Christians, and we'll explore this more in our series, we are called to respond empathetically and to never forget that we are products of grace. So we are not in a position because we are a needy people by design. Yes. Christians are needy by design, or we may not be Christians at all. So I look forward to exploring this conversation more.
Absolutely. So we'll see y'all at the next Truth Table. Bye.